probably hear it, you probably heard it already. Situationally interviewing is a very interesting element, an important element that I always applied when I early developed and learned about this technique. So this really enables you to really fully understand the strengths and the weaknesses of an employee, and you then are able to really fully understand from real life examples that they're able to give you what they've done, how they've done it, and they really have a better opportunity to grasp and understand if the person would be suitable for the role. There is a constant focus on the guest service, and this is really something that is active 24 hours a day. If you have one guest asking you for a particular service that it is not that is not been basically handled before, you really have a precedent and you need to really pay attention. Also, if you have more than 2 or 3 guests asking you for something similar, then you will need to gear your service and operation in order to fulfill those guest requests. There is also a key focus on administration and scheduling and budgeting, and is also very important part of the head concierge position and role. And of course, you need to really establish a very strong relationship with not only your colleagues, but with several departments and your external suppliers. The next slide is more of a departmental overview. This is a schematic of where the concierge team is really placed. We all know that we have a general manager or managing director. We have a hotel manager or operation manager or executive assistant manager there that is really focusing in running the day-to-day operation of the whole hotel. There is normally a link with a rooms division director or director of rooms, and the head concierge or the chef concierge reports normally to the rooms division director, or in some occasions directly to the hotel manager, or also in very few occasions, like I had the pleasure of basically having the experience when I worked at One Norwich, I was reporting directly to the general manager, and I did it for 4 years. And that was really a very specific and a very powerful and very creative experience. Have the opportunity to work directly with a general manager, you will find it incredibly powerful and creative. The next slide is more related, is focusing more on the diagram of the concierge department in itself. So really, the head concierge, one step up, is linking with the rooms division manager, but then is pretty much in line with a number of other department managers, head of departments, the front office manager, the spa, the F&B, HODs, and so on. And the hierarchy of the concierge department, you would have an assistant head concierge and a number of concierges and senior concierges, a night concierge as well, and a page person. So this is basically to guarantee a 24-hour service with the concierge desk operation. Normally, the head concierge is also in charge of the luggage porter team, which has, normally speaking, in quite a medium to large operation, a senior luggage porter, and also the luggage porters and night luggage porters. And also you have the door team that are in essence tasked in welcoming the guests at the front door. They have a great level of responsibility in driving guest cars that very often are very expensive, and so they need to be trusted with very specific and very detailed risk assessment and also training in order to ensure that those cars are properly handled, properly looked after, and not scratched. You've probably seen many wonderful hotels around the world that have collection of cars usually parked in front that can be easily be a number of millions of dollars worth of value of this car. So ensuring that those vehicles are well looked after and not scratched is an incredibly important focus. On the next slide, we can really think about the role and the skills required by the concierge. Leadership is a strong element, and this is really done on a minute by minute basis. You know, you lead from the front, you lead by example, and you always ensure that you set always the right precedent for all your colleagues, and you're there to help them and support them if they need any help. Of course, the concierge desk is in the lobby, is the main stage, and is really like a theater. So in essence, you need to ensure that the uniforms are always correct, the grooming is impeccable, and this is really delivered on a consistent level on a daily basis. Communication is again another strong element, and both verbal and written, and then non-verbal communication. When you are really again communicating with guests, very often, as you all know, 70% of the way you move and the way you look at someone and how you really deliver a phrase is the true expression of your soul. So communication is really beyond important to represent who you are as an individual, but again, your team and your hotel. Organizational skills are very important. In a sense, you need to really create a very strong back office, very strong processes, very clear processes, and those really are the one that really set up the clear and strong framework of what you need to do. And one very simple word of advice here, I put in my little notes, stationery, because it is very often known that the concierge department is the one that really has a pen that works, has a full stock of envelopes, has a full stock of shopping bags, and has enough wrapping paper, and you're able to actually prepare and wrap up a beautiful gift very, very quickly. So be very creative and really imagine that you want to have an awful lot of equipment there ready to support you, because if you don't have it, you'll be running around the building, or very often you'll be running around the town in order to buy something that you need and you should have had in the first place. Another element is customer service, of course, and providing warm and helpful service. And we need to really understand who the guests are, and everyone is an individual. So the simple and strong focus is in learning who your guest is, remembering the name, and using the name is something that will always go a very long way. And empathy is something that comes in having the strong ability to actually put yourself in the guest's shoes, and very often they actually will be running to you because they have a problem, and particularly you would be measured, and your skills will be measured sometimes when you have an issue, when there is a complaint. And unfortunately, things do go wrong, but the way you react, the way you empathize very quickly to the guest, with the guest, and the way you quickly formulate a very strong, a very clear way to resolve the problem and communicate that way that you want to, the way you want to help resolve the problem, will actually make a very big impact. So really, empathy is something that needs to be there in what we do, and please make a strong effort to remember the guest name. That will go a very long way. Problem solving. Very often, just a very quick synopsis here, very often the concierge needs to solve problems, and the doors will be closed, the window will be shut, and you need to find a way in to actually have access to something that the guest needs. So often we need to work very hard to find to open the back door, to find the smart key that will basically open the back door of a company, or to find a contact that will actually be able to make us really fulfill the guest request. So this can be a very strong drive, and sometimes you can spend, I have spent in the past weeks in order to find a solution to the guest. But if you have that drive and determination, you can achieve that. So one thing that I say to guests, sometimes magic takes a little longer, but if you really are willing to actually go the extra mile, you can create magic and make it happen. This goes links into attention to detail. Every guest, as I said, is an individual, and you need to create very individual and craft individual request. And again, that's a very important element. You need to know your guest and understand who they are and how they want certain things. And also, one of the last elements is adaptability. So as I give you the example of making the photocopies, really, I was determined to take care of the guest. So I adapted really to that request, and I spent all night in order to make things happen. Moving on to the next slide. This is really more on setting up a department, and again, as I was making the reference before, on the stronger infrastructure of your team and the pillars, the key pillars of what you really need to do in this process. So defining sort of roles and responsibilities with very clear and very strong job descriptions and very detailed job descriptions is a must. You really do not want to compromise there, and you want to profile also your candidates. Myers-Briggs that comes to mind is an example, and also your job descriptions are an absolute guideline to really give you a very strong point of reference when you're really starting to hire and your team, and when you want to have a clear understanding of the different roles within the department. Defining the services is also another strong element. Every hotel, in principle, is very similar, but also every hotel is very different because some of the geography, some of the logistics will inevitably vary. And so when you actually write your standard operating procedures, your SOPs, you really want to be as detailed as possible in order to ensure that you put in a lot of key elements to help your team do the job very effectively. So you really need to study an awful lot of the service. You have your service standards, but you need to study and understand the logistics of your building, and you thread those in when you write your SOPs, and when you take care, of course, of the training. The training would be very important to use those service standards, and you want to do it over and over again for a little while in order to ensure that you have your team understanding those responsibilities. Goals and objectives, SMART goals and objectives. I would suggest to start even with one SMART objective and really ensure that you have your team sort of part, involve them in the process of creating a small number of smart goals and objectives, and really try them out and really celebrate once you completed whatever small project you want to start delivering, whether it's over a week, over a quarter, but you really start, very slowly, but ensure that you actually create this kind of mindset where everything is very clear, everything is defined, everything is measurable, and then at the end of your set time, you measure it and you see how well you've done. And of course, you perfect it over the time. Customer service strategy is something linked to the services that the concierge provides. As an example, if there is a new restaurant opening in town, you really want to make sure that you go and visit it. You make sure that you get to know the team behind that restaurant, who's working there. Make sure that you introduce yourself, your team, and your hotel, because in normal circumstances, in large cities, when you really have major restaurants opening, all the guests will want to go there. So as an example, you really want to create a strong relationship with those suppliers, whether it's also an exhibition, you want to go and see it, you want to go and discover it, and being able to actually have that intimate understanding of whatever that may be, so you can explain it properly in detail and make suggestion to your guests. We can move to the next section, and evaluating and improving the process is always very important. So really you want to ensure that you have an awful lot of sort of your radar on all the time to really understand what is working, what is not working, and quickly move towards either changing something, making improvements, or stop doing what you're doing, and really ensure that the guest service is very slick, is very simple, and very effective. Investing in technology is something that the concierge really started doing not so long ago. There is always now a software available for the concierge to start to use. They've been around for about 15, 20 years now. Prior to that, it was pretty much pen and paper and the telephone book, and it was very manual. But in the last 15, 20 years, a number of concierge software systems have come to life, and they need to be used. They need to be used because even when I was working in the last hotel with only 121 bedrooms, when you really have high-profile guests, demanding guests, they change their itinerary 5, 6, 7 times. And you could be actually making 15, 18, 20 restaurant reservations in a period of a month prior to the guest arrival. And then once the guest checks in, he's still asking you to change and make changes to the reservation. So having these systems is essential, because you record everything, every single step, everything single stuff that you actually take care of the guest. And so you have not only a record that is pretty much available for any moment in time during the guest stay, but you also build a very important database and the profile of the guest. So really, technology is now very important and needs to be very used all the time. A very important and positive workplace culture is really a must. I always believed in really working in a collaborative way, and is not really be autocratic and say to your colleagues, I'm the boss. You do what I'm telling you to do. This is really something that is quite destructive. And very earlier on in one's career, when you actually start as a young supervisor or manager, everybody tends to do that. And so my word of advice would be to really have a very strong mindset with your team and create collaboration. Don't be autocratic because everyone can make a mistake. And I realized very quickly myself that when I was making my mistakes, when I was a young manager and I was criticizing my team, they would also turn around then and very easily criticize me as well. And I didn't like it. So it is very important to respect deeply your team and to create a very strong collaborative element and foundation that will create a very successful team. And always evaluating performance. This is very often peer-to-peer between colleagues, observing your teams, but also making really a very strong note and giving attention to your customers. They will always give you feedback. You need to take it with an awful lot of positivity, because if they spend time to come back to you with some feedback, whether it's good or bad or indifferent, really take notice, understand it, study it, and really try to develop something that will improve the service if you receive such feedback. Never be afraid, really, because it's always an ongoing process.